In the farthest reaches of space, on a forgotten moon orbiting a dying star, there was a colony built by humans who had fled the tyranny of Earth's crumbling government. The colony, known as Maris V, had once been a thriving hub of life, but over the years, it became a place of isolation and despair. The human settlers were stranded, separated from the rest of the universe, and their hope was dwindling. Among the many alien species inhabiting the moons and planets in the outer rim, there was one being who had come to symbolize everything the settlers feared and hated. Her name was Kalia, a member of the Koreshi, a species of towering horned creatures with skin that shifted like the textures of the Earth's oceans, their eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. From the first day the Koreshi had arrived on Maris V, they were met with suspicion and fear. Their monstrous appearance, combined with their highly intelligent minds, made them both fascinating and terrifying. Yet, there was one thing that distinguished Kalia from the others of her kind. She had an undeniable beauty. Kalia's skin shimmered like liquid starlight under the colony's twin suns, and her long flowing hair was a cascade of silvery tendrils. Her eyes, two deep pools of emerald green, glowed with an ethereal light, mesmerizing anyone who dared to look too long. She was far from the monster that others perceived her to be. But her beauty went unnoticed by the people of Maris V, overshadowed by the fear of her alien heritage. Everywhere she went, the settlers whispered. Children screamed at the sight of her, and adults would cross to the other side of the street, avoiding her gaze. To them, she was not a person but a beast, an unworthy creature who did not belong among them. Kalia's heart ached as she wandered the colony, alone in a world that had rejected her. She found solace in the forests surrounding Maris V, where she would gaze up at the stars and wonder if there was anywhere in the universe where she could belong. Then, one fateful day, a new human arrived on the moon, a man named Elijah Walker. Elijah was unlike the others. He was not a soldier or a miner, but a scientist, sent from the Central Coalition to conduct research on the moon's mineral deposits. When Elijah stepped off the transport ship, he saw the Koreshi standing at the edge of the landing bay, her gaze distant and forlorn. But unlike the others, he didn't see a beast. He saw something else entirely. Middle. Elijah had spent much of his life on the outskirts of society. As a child, he had been drawn to stories of faraway planets and ancient civilizations. He had always felt a deep connection to the unknown, and his curiosity had pushed him to explore the depths of both space and the human condition. When he first saw Kalia, something stirred in him, a recognition of the pain that lingered in her gaze, an understanding of what it meant to be misunderstood. He didn't view her as a threat. He saw only a kindred spirit in need of someone to see her true nature. One evening, as he ventured out into the dense forests surrounding the colony, Elijah encountered Kalia once again. This time, she was sitting by a stream, her fingers gently tracing the water's surface as she stared up at the moon above. The sight was almost ethereal, Kalia's beauty, her sorrow, her loneliness. Elijah couldn't help himself. He approached her slowly, cautiously, unsure of what kind of reception he would receive. "Kalia," he called softly. She turned toward him, her eyes widening in surprise, but there was no fear, no hatred in her gaze, just curiosity. "You speak my name," she said, her voice low and melodic, like the song of distant planets. "I do," Elijah replied. "I've seen you here before. You're always alone." Her lips curled into a small, sad smile. "It is my fate," she said. "The humans here, they fear me. They do not understand me. Maybe they fear what they don't understand," Elijah offered. He knelt beside her, keeping a respectful distance but not shying away. "I'm not afraid. For the first time, Kalia looked at him as if he were something more than just another human to be feared or ignored. She studied him closely, trying to understand why this man was different from all the others who had either dismissed her or run away. "You are different," she said, her voice softer now. "Why?" "I don't know," Elijah replied. "Maybe it's because I've spent my whole life studying the unknown. Maybe it's because I've seen enough of the universe to know that beauty doesn't always fit into the categories we create." Kalia blinked in surprise. "Beauty?" she asked. "You think I'm beautiful?" Elijah's gaze softened. "Yes," he said, his voice gentle. "In a way, I think you're more beautiful than anything I've ever seen. You have a strength in you, a grace that most people can't see." "I can see it." Kalia was silent for a long moment, her heart hammering in her chest. No one had ever said such things to her, not even the people of her own kind. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Over the following weeks, Elijah continued to seek Kalia out, spending time with her in the forests, talking about everything and nothing at all. They shared stories of their worlds, their lives, their dreams. The settlers in the colony began to notice the changes in Kalia. They saw her no longer as a monster but as a being capable of kindness and depth. Though they still held prejudices, there was something in her demeanor that began to shift. It was as if, in Elijah's presence, Kalia had finally found her voice. But there were still obstacles. A group of colony leaders, those who were most entrenched in their hatred and fear, took notice of the growing bond between Elijah and Kalia. They saw it as a threat, a potential disruption to the fragile order of the colony. Fearing that Kalia might somehow lead a rebellion or create an uprising, they decided to act. One evening, as the two sat by the stream once again, a group of armed men arrived, led by Colonel Harris, the head of the colony's defense force. They surrounded the two of them, weapons drawn. "Elijah Walker," Colonel Harris called out, "you are ordered to cease your contact with this creature." Kalia stood, her body tensing in defense, but Elijah placed a hand on her arm, urging her to stay calm. "I don't think you understand," Elijah said, his voice steady. "Kalia is not a threat. She's not a beast. She's a person, one who deserves kindness, respect, and dignity." Colonel Harris sneered. "You're blinded by your own foolishness, Walker. The Koreshi are nothing but animals. This one will lead us to destruction." Kalia's heart broke as she heard the words. It wasn't the first time she'd been called a monster, but hearing it from the human she had hoped to trust stung like a blade. "I won't allow this," Elijah said, stepping forward, his voice unwavering. "Kalia is not your enemy. She's not a beast. And I won't let you harm her." For a moment, the two sides stood frozen, the tension thick in the air. But then Kalia did something unexpected. She spoke. "I do not wish to fight," she said, her voice quiet but strong. "But I will not stand by while I am treated as less than I am." The soldiers hesitated, their weapons still raised. But Kalia's words had an effect. One by one, the armed men lowered their guns. Colonel Harris gritted his teeth, but he knew that fighting Kalia would only cause more unrest.